Welcome to the Deep Dive. You know, when you really look at almost anything, whether it's a single stable atom, maybe an ancient tree, or even just an idea that lasts, you're seeing something pretty profound happening.
Yeah, definitely.
Today we're diving into what our sources call the architecture of lasting being, the idea that the universe doesn't just, exist, it actively persists.
That's really the core insight, isn't it? And it's crucial to distinguish persistence from just survival. Survival feels passive, like just hanging on.
Right.
Persistence, in this view, is more architectural. It's the enduring coherence of a pattern, even when things change or get disrupted over time. It's active.
And that's compelling because, well, everything we usually learn about physics points towards entropy, right? This drift towards disorder. Things should just fall apart.
Exactly. Entropy is the background rule, the tendency for things to dissolve into randomness. So persistence, this lasting pattern, feels almost like a miracle against that backdrop.
So this framework we're exploring, the ladder of emergent persistence, or LEP, that's mapping how this miracle actually works, how form endures.
Precisely. If you've heard of the ladder of emergent intelligence, the LEI, which maps how mind evolves, think of the LEP as mapping the evolution of being itself. The foundation, and the engine driving it, according to these sources, is this concept of syntropy.
Okay, hang on. Syntropy. If entropy is that sandcastle washing away, syntropy isn't just like constantly rebuilding the castle brick by brick, is it?
It's maybe a bit more fundamental than that. Think of it as self-renewing order. It's like the system has a kind of memory, a recursive memory that allows the form itself to endure and guide the rebuilding. So yeah, it directs repair even when energy is lost. It's less about just rebuilding and more about the blueprint itself persisting, maybe even being reinforced by the very changes happening around it.
Like the blueprint is etched deeper somehow.
That's a good way to put it. So the LEP traces this syntropic spiral, how the universe fundamentally learns to remember, how to hold on to form.
All right, let's climb this ladder then. Starting right at the bottom, layer 0, syntropic drive. This sounds pretty abstract before existence itself.
It is abstract, yeah. It's described as the first whisper in the void. It's not quite a physical law in the usual sense. It's more like a fundamental tilt. A probability bias in the quantum vacuum towards pattern, towards coherence. The idea is, without this initial nudge away from pure randomness, nothing structured could ever get started.
Okay, but isn't that kind of convenient? Like the anthropic principle, suggesting the universe is set up just for things like us to exist.
Yeah.
That always feels a bit circular.
That's a really important point, and the sources are careful here. They frame the syntropic drive as a bias toward pattern in general, not specifically towards life or consciousness, just structure over featureless uniformity.
Ah, okay. A subtle difference.
A crucial one. And this bias is immediately put to the test in layer 1, quantum fluctuations.
Right. These are those virtual particles, the flickers of form, popping in and out of existence incredibly fast.
Exactly. Brief ghosts of possibility. They show emergence, but they don't last. They lack endurance.
So they're like the universe's first rough sketches. Trying things out.
Kind of a test bed, yeah. Most vanish instantly. But the underlying rules that allow some configurations to potentially be stable are being explored. And that leads to the first real win for persistence in layer 2. Real particle formation.
This is where things stick around. Quarks, electrons, gluons. They cohere. Stability finally overcomes the fluctuation.
Yeah, and that's huge. They become anchors of pattern. We've gone from fleeting possibilities to actual definable building blocks.
Okay, so we have stable particles. The alphabet is formed. What's next? Layer 3.
Layer 3 is atomic coherence. Now, these particles combine into atoms, hydrogen, helium, carbon, etc. And these atoms have a stable identity.
Okay, so quantum rules, right. Quantized energy levels, electron shells.
Yeah.
They behave predictably.
Exactly. They follow a strict syntax bonding rules, conservation laws. Persistence here becomes atomic integrity. You have reliable units.
And from atoms, we get molecules. Layer 4, molecular bonding.
Right. This is where order begins to stack into story. Molecules like water, carbon chains, crystal lattices, they form repeatable geometries.
So persistence becomes recipe-driven, using those atomic rules to build bigger, more complex, but still predictable structures.
Precisely. Combinatorial logic kicks in. We're building the toolkit for much more complex functions, especially the kind needed for life.
Okay, so we've gone from a bias towards pattern through particles and atoms to these reliable molecular recipes. Now, the logic seems to shift, doesn't it, towards self-sustaining systems.
It really does. We move from the fixed structures of physics and chemistry towards the dynamic, self-renewing logic of biology. We need to teach the pattern to maintain itself actively.
And that starts with layer 5, autocatalytic loops.
Yeah, this is a key threshold where life flirts with itself. These are sets of chemical reactions where the products of the reaction actually help catalyze the reaction itself. They feed back to keep it going.
Right, they reinitiate their own production, which leads to this idea of autopoiesis.
Exactly. Autopoiesis, literally self-making. The capacity of a system to continuously generate and sustain its own structure and components. Persistence becomes circular, reflexive.
A self-contained loop. But loops can break, right? How does the pattern survive disruption or last beyond the life of one loop?
That's the critical next step. You need memory. Layer 6. Genetic encoding. DNA, RNA. This is where memory literally becomes embodied in matter.
Okay, the blueprint gets written down physically. It can be copied, passed on.
And crucially, it can mutate and be repaired. This makes persistence transgenerational. Variation can build on remembered success. The pattern can evolve.
Now, I was a bit surprised. Layer 7, the cell membrane, the enclosure, comes after the genetic code. Wouldn't you need the container first?
That's a common thought, but think about what's most fundamental for persistence. Layer 6 establishes that the pattern itself, the information, can endure and replicate across time. That's the core achievement.
Okay.
Layer 7, the cellular enclosure. The lipid membrane, creating that inside-outside boundary, is then the essential defense and localization of that already proven persistent pattern. The code defines what persists. The cell wall protects and concentrates it.
Ah, I see. So the code establishes this pattern works and can be copied, and the membrane says, okay, let's keep this working copy safe right here. It creates a self.
Precisely. It localizes persistence and allows the system to act as a coherent unit, defending itself against entropy through selective permeability.
Got it. And that individual self then finds strength in numbers. Layer 8, multicellular cooperation.
Yes. Cells, specialized tissues, organs, complex organisms, persistence becomes a symphony.
Where the whole is more resilient than any individual cell.
Exactly. The whole becomes more persistent than any part. The system's persistence is now vested in the coordinated function of specialized parts, not just identical replication, like a city versus a single house.
And the city needs ongoing management, which brings us to layer 9, homeostatic regulation.
Right. The body actively remembers balance. Think temperature regulation, pH levels, blood sugar, constant monitoring and adjustment through feedback loops.
It's dynamic stability.
It really is. And notice, this is a different kind of persistence mechanism operating alongside genetics. Genetics, layer 6, is about long-term generational fidelity of the blueprint. Homeostasis, layer 9, is about real-time dynamic adjustments to keep the current system functioning now.
So it's like the immediate intelligent maintenance responding to the environment because evolution via genetics is too slow for moment-to-moment survival.
Well put. It shows persistence isn't just structure. It's also about maintaining internal coherence actively. And this whole biological cascade culminates in layer 10, reproductive continuity.
Where the pattern jumps across generations consistently.
Right. Mortality isn't the end of the pattern story. It's part of the process. Death becomes a relay race, passing the baton of the genetic information. Evolution itself is stable change built on this remembered success. Time becomes an ally. So we've built up from basic physics to complex life maintaining itself through time. Now the final layers scale this persistence dramatically outward.
Okay, layer 11, ecosystems and biospheres. This is persistence scaling into a living mesh, right? Interdependence between species.
Exactly. Symbiosis, predator-prey dynamics, niche construction. It creates this vast, interconnected web. And the key insight here is that coherence becomes distributed.
Yeah.
Meaning the system's ability to persist, its memory of how to function, isn't held by any single species or organism. It's in the relationships, the network itself. You can lose nodes, even important ones, but the overall topology, the function, often endures.
The network remembers, not just the individual parts.
Precisely. The resilience is in the connections.
And then, layered onto this biological network, something completely new emerges. Layer 11.5, cultural and mimetic transmission.
Yeah, this is a fascinating jump. Mind begins to persist beyond matter. We're talking language, stories, art, laws, institutions, transmitting memes.
Ideas, values, ways of doing things.
Right. And these can persist and evolve across generations of minds, often independent of the specific genetic lineage. It's like a second evolution running in parallel. Think about philosophical ideas or scientific principles that have endured for centuries, even as empires rose and
The
fell.
persistence is carried by minds and shared practices, not just DNA.
Exactly.
And we've taken that externalization even further with layer 12, the technological and digital substrate.
Absolutely. We started writing things down, then printing. Now, cloud servers, digital archives, the internet, we're actively externalizing persistence, storing memory outside our biological brains.
And decoupling it from biological decay rates, too. Digital information can be copied perfectly, almost instantly, anywhere.
It's a profound shift. Cultural memory in layer 11.5 was still tied to physical artifacts books, sculptures, which decay. Digital persistence. It's potentially far more robust, operating on timescales potentially much longer than biological ones. The very logic of persistence, born in physics and life, is now seeding itself in silicon.
Wow. Okay, so from ecosystems to ideas to digital code. What could possibly be higher? Layer 13. Meta-pattern continuity, cosmic recursion.
This is pulling back to the widest possible view. It's about the persistence of the fundamental rules themselves, the deep structure, the grammar of the universe.
You mean things like the laws of physics, gravity, the speed of light, the fundamental constants.
Exactly. These are the meta patterns.
Yeah.
If layer 0 was that initial bias, layer 13 is the enduring stability of the underlying operating system that allows all the other layers to emerge and persist. The universe continues because the rules governing interaction are themselves incredibly stable, invariant.
The architecture holds because the deepest foundations are solid.
That's the idea. The universe remembers how to remember because its fundamental how doesn't change.
Okay, that's quite a journey. From that first tentative bias in the quantum foam, through particles, life, ecosystems, ideas, digital networks, right up to the unchanging laws of physics themselves. Seeing the whole ladder of emergent persistence laid out like this is, well, it's kind of staggering.
It really reframes how you see things, doesn't it? And it naturally leads to a final thought, what the sources touch on as a kind of omega layer or syntropic imperative.
An imperative,
Right.
like something we should do.
If you accept the premise that the universe demonstrates this profound inbuilt drive towards creating and maintaining coherent patterns against entropy, then what's our role as conscious parts of that system?
We should align with it, help it along, instead of just adding to the disorder.
That seems to be the implication, to actively nurture coherence in our own lives, in our societies, in our relationship with the planet, even in the digital systems we build. It's about countering entropy through conscious care, integration, design.
Not just surviving, but actively.
Yeah.
Midwifing the enduring, as the source puts it.
I like that phrasing, midwifing the enduring. Because we, particularly at layers 11.5 and 12 with culture and technology, are perhaps the first layer that can consciously observe the whole ladder and make choices about which patterns we value and want to reinforce.
So bringing it right down to us, living our lives.
Yeah.
What's the takeaway?
I think it comes back to that distinction made early on. The sources suggest persistence is not resistance. It is resonance with the real. It's not about fighting change. It's about aligning with the fundamental pattern-making nature of reality.
Resonance, not resistance.
Yeah. The ladder of emergent intelligence gives mind its potential, its wings, you could say. But the ladder of emergent persistence builds the stable nest, the structure, for being itself. And maybe the ultimate point is that every mechanism on this ladder is designed to pass the torch, to ensure continuity.
So the final question for us, for you listening, is maybe, what torch were we choosing to pass on?
Exactly. If our knowledge, our culture, our technology represent our unique contribution to persistence, what coherence are you actively designing right now that's intended to outlast you? What part of the pattern will you midwife into the future?
That is definitely something to think about. What pattern are we reinforcing? Until the next deep dive, we'll leave you with that question.